Hey guys, Mcfixit here. We're going to be working on a Discraft Meteor. You're going to see that disc here in a second before I wash it, but this is the final result, and I want to walk through all the tools and supplies that you need to make a stencil glue bed die. And so you're going to want whatever kind of stamp or stencil that you want, and you're going to get some Oracle 651. You can either tape it down and just do it like this, or if you have a Cricut, you can go ahead and use that. We are doing a glue bed die, so you are going to want a pan for glue. This one's been used a couple of times. Clear glue. You're going to want some kind of knife if you are cutting it out yourself. Picks are really helpful, and this little Cricut tool or a credit card work real well. You're going to want whatever dyes you want. We're going to be using Chem and dye, and so I'll have a card right up here in the description and up there at the top of the screen that shows you exactly how I dyed each of these. I'm going to be using sun yellow, fire red, a bunch of acetone because you need it for pretty much all of these. Some different paintbrush thicknesses. You can't probably see it, but over here is my turntable. You'll make sure you'll want that. You'll need transfer paper. I like to use a ruler, and sometimes I use some other things I have just kind of lying around. You'll also want a dropper for the glue bed, and so lots of paper towels. You may find some painter's tape really helpful as well. So we're going to go ahead and take the disc and go ahead and begin to wash it. Go ahead and turn on some warm water. Go ahead and put your magic eraser under to kind of activate it. And go ahead and get your disc nice and wet. And then go ahead and just take your magic eraser and just go over it. You don't have to go super hard, but just go over it to clean the disc. Make sure you get the rim all the way around the rim. And you go ahead and turn off your water. Get a paper towel and begin to just dry it off. Just like that. And that's ready to go into your bed as soon as it's completely dry. So now you've gone ahead and done that, washed it all up. I like to go ahead and set up my area, so I'm going to put my disc off to the side. I'm going to move the acetone back. We are going to keep this close by, and I'm going to move all of this fun stuff over here so I don't mess that up in the meantime. This is an important step, at least in my mind, to make sure you're all set, ready to go. Now, I already have used this pie pan, I don't even know, probably 10 times now, with the majority of the same glue. So if you're starting fresh, that's totally fine. If you don't have any glue in here, it's going to be the exact same process. Go ahead and spin off your cap and go ahead and begin to pour. And so when you're pouring, you want to pour slow. I'm going to try to hit a lot of the area up on the top. And as you pour, I'm only wanting to do about an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. So you're not putting a ton of dye down, or a ton of glue down. You don't have to like put 4 inches of glue down. That's not necessary. If you want to, that's fine. You can see some residual effects, and I'm totally okay with that. You can see some other colors. I think it always helps add kind of some coolness to the design. The next thing you're going to do, especially if it's used dye, is you want to make sure all of your edges are good, because the disc is not, it's a pretty big disc. If you look at the Meteor, it is not a tiny disc, and so you do want to make sure you don't have any, I call them boogers, which I think that's what this is right here. It's just a piece of dried glue. Sometimes that does happen. Go ahead and get that out of there. You'll also get a lot of air bubbles, and what I found most useful for air bubbles, sometimes you can pop them. I'll try to pop this one, and it worked that time. It doesn't always work popping them. I do wipe it each and every time. Sometimes I like to go around the edges as well to make sure there's no other glue boogers, which can happen, but I try my best to wrap up these each and every time. If you see any other bubbles, you can also, if it doesn't work, just pull down and pull to the side. Straight down, pull to the side. And a lot of times that will pull the air bubble. So I spent a few minutes looking for air bubbles. You don't really want them in your disc project. So I think that's probably good. I don't see any more. Oh, there's one. So there's like 2 or 3 right next to each other. So I just grabbed all of them and pulled them to the edge. For some reason that works really well for me. I know other people have different methods. I know some people use blow torches and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and grab this sun yellow, And this dropper, you want to be careful not sticking it all the way down, because there is a little bit, I try to be really careful doing this, a little bit of extra dye at the bottom that sometimes sits after a while, and so you don't want to soak up that dye. You just want to soak up the liquid. And really all I'm doing is pouring a ton of yellow dye on this. So it's just like the whole thing is going to get covered in yellow dye. So I'm not really being careful right now. The whole base coat of this is going to be yellow. And that's kind of my goal. You can normally go from a lighter color to a darker color on this. And so if your base is yellow, that fire red should show up pretty good. Like I said, this is probably the most dye I normally put in when I do it like this. And I forgot to say, I did, the last time I used this, I put just a touch of, there it is, the Spike It non-garlic. Get the unscented, please. Do us all a favor on the disc golf course. Unscented. And yeah, I just put like maybe, I don't know, a teaspoon in, maybe half of a teaspoon. And so that's where you're seeing some of this, like kind of almost like weird coloration. That is that. You're not really going to see that much on the disc. You're going to see it more just right here. Okay, we're done with the yellow for now. Maybe the whole time. So I'm going to go ahead and set that back up to the side. Now is kind of the part that is really easy. You just set your disc in, especially because there's not a lot of other colorations. I still go kind of my normal method, which is putting it in and then slowly rotating it to the side. So from right to left. And this light pink color should accept this dye really good. So I want to make sure each side is just about equal on that. You're not going to set like an acetone container or the glue on top of it. This is not a shaving cream dye. I don't know why I can't ever remember the word shaving cream when I'm making videos. For some reason, it just seems so weird to say shaving cream, but clear glue doesn't. I don't know. I'm weird. So go ahead and let this sit for 24 hours. I mean it, like literally let it sit for 24 hours. It sounds crazy. Let it sit for a full day. Then we'll come back, just be a couple of seconds in this video from now, and then we'll go ahead and continue with the dye job. Okay, now that this thing is sat for about 24 hours now, go ahead and pull it up. We're going to set it down in there. Go ahead and cover this back up because I do like to use these quite often. And go ahead and get some soapy water and Dawn dish soap. Spray the whole thing down. Get a paper towel. Begin to mix all that. You can see how thick that is. We'll turn the water on fully. I'm going to spray it down one more time. The only time you normally have kind of any issues is around the rim with any of the glue kind of sticking. And there's a little imperfection on the side here. That's because I reused that bed. Remember, the color was like this and it turned it to yellow, so there was a little bit of a lightening of the color of the disc, which is good news. That's what we were going for. Go ahead and dry your disc off. You want it totally dry before the next step, so you may need to take a couple of paper towels or just let it sit for a few minutes. Okay, now that this has all been cleaned off and is dried, we're going to go ahead and work on the stencil. There's a few ways you can do this. If you don't have a Cricut, you can simply print out the stencil, tape it all down. You may want some kind of cardboard, then use your X-Acto knife and go ahead and cut it out. But since I have the stencil pre-cut, just going to use my pick or weeding tool and pull out the parts. Any of the parts you pull out are going to be whatever color you choose to dye it, and then the rest should stay nice and yellow, which was our base color, or whatever color you choose to do. So take your time by pulling all of those up. This pick works really well at because it's got that sharp edge to just get right where you want it, and it pulls that vinyl right up. Sorry, we do have some torrential downpour happening, so if it is a little muffled right now, I apologize, but I'm trying to do this before I go into work, so hopefully it's not too distracting in the background. Okay, so the next part sometimes can be tricky, sometimes not too bad. Go ahead and pick one of the pieces up, and as you're doing it, sometimes the other ones come up really nice like it's doing right now. Wow, all of them did. That doesn't always happen that way. So just so you know, go ahead and pitch that, and you're going to grab your disc and kind of figure out what you want. And so if you put your disc down, this gives you a really nice edge. I think I'm going to go with the outside one to keep both the outside and inside line. And so I don't know why sometimes I have a lot of difficulty with this part of it. There it goes. So peel that right back just like so. Go ahead and grab your transfer paper. Peel it back off. Now the goal of this is to line this up as close to perfect as possible. It is not always easy to line it up perfect, but had a huge air bubble. I don't mind little air bubbles, they're not going to hurt anything, but huge ones I do kind of come back over if I can easily, especially on this thick of a stencil. The air bubbles you really got to worry about are in a minute. So we'll go ahead and press all that nice and down just like so. We'll take the other side, oh, that was really loud. Kind of do the same thing. The goal of this is that the transfer paper receives that stamp. So if the transfer paper can receive the stamp, not the stamp, the stencil, the vinyl, it should peel up really easily. So you just put it straight down and begin to peel, and the whole thing hopefully comes up without any issue. It does look like I have one little snag there. Let's see if I go to the other side, if it just fixes itself, and it did. If you catch any snags in the whole thing, you can always take this and go back at it to get the stamp up. So this is an old piece of this that I just did the kind of the same bullseye effect. It is one thing that's been helping me try to keep it very straight as we put it down. And so we're going to put the disc actually on this, and then put the disc down. And I just literally trace the disc. And because this is the exact same size as, because they're 12 by 12 inch, it should help me begin to line some of these up a little straighter, because you do have the ability to see all the different lines on it. And once you set this down, you're done. You can't pull it back up, or you got to redo your whole stamp or your whole vinyl. So let's go right there. And this vinyl is a little bigger than the actual disc, just so you're aware of that. I did not make it perfect size for it, and just as long as it gets on there and looks really cool, that's really all I care about. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this just a little bit to help it seal along some of the edges, and then we'll go back and do this pressing it down and getting the air bubbles out a lot more in just a moment. But this is just to help seal it all into place, so when we pull back. And the other thing is, this stuff comes off really easy If you put it on regular paper, this would want to stick to the regular paper. So that's one of the other reasons. In fact, I think I'm just going to see if I can try to press some of this up against the edge line. And then begin to peel back. I do know this little piece is going to just come off almost instantly, but that's okay. The little circle around the edge, I guarantee you that's just going to come off. Yep, it did, which is totally fine. Go ahead and get the shiny side up. Save your transfer paper for another day. You can reuse these quite a bit. There will be a point that they don't stick anymore and you will need to replace it, but as long as it's still sticking good, I reuse it quite a bit. And so I'm just kind of going around the edges, making sure this looks okay wherever it's hitting. And then you're just going to make sure it's really good and press down on all of the edges of this, because anywhere you put this that it's not, it will kind of deteriorate a little bit and you're going to have nasty looking lines. So you do want to make sure that's good and down everywhere it needs to be, because you want good crisp edge lines the whole way around it. Now if it's in the center, like even right here, I just kind of created that bubble. I probably could get it out still. I'm not as worried about that. I'm worried about if it's right on the edge, and that's where you want to spend some time working that air bubble out. And even like right here, you want to spend time where all these come in right here. If you were going to put this in like a glue bed, I would encourage you to let the disc sit for about 24 hours to let the vinyl cure a little bit. We're not going to have to let it cure because we're not going to do that method. Just because if you're putting it in there, you really want to make sure it's really good and down on there. And again, any place you have an air bubble where you can see the color underneath, you need to really spend some time getting those air bubbles out, working the vinyl a little bit. And all I'm really doing is just pressing down and pulling at different angles to try to get it to go down. There's no like real big super technique on it. It's just being patient and not pressing too hard where you rip the vinyl as well is important. There is some kind of, I guess you would say, like pressure limit you should be putting on it. Don't like rip the stamp, the stencil, because the vinyl is rippable. It's like you're able to peel it off afterwards. Even though the Oracle 651 is supposed to be kind of permanent, I think it's 5 or 6 years outside if you do let it cure properly, which is just letting it sit long enough before doing anything with it, which is kind of a cool thing. Now this one is taking me a little bit longer to go around the entire outside because there's just so many different lines and I want to make sure it looks good for my buddy. So again, just take your time, keep at it. Normally if you go too quick, it will show you will have more mess ups, because these air bubbles on the edge are just not good for making this look super clean. There's a little bit of the stamp that did not, or the stencil that did not come up here. This might have been where I started. It did not release clean. So it's something else to look for. Just that little teeny tiny speck will make a little bit of an impact on your final product if you're not careful. Okay, I think that looks good right there. I'm gonna go ahead and start cleaning up my area so I can begin to put that dye on it. And I think I blew out, I think he wanted red. Let me double check a text message really quickly. Okay, so he did want red. I'm glad I didn't paint it blue. Go ahead and put gloves back on, because you are going to be working with dye now and you don't want to mess this up. I see a couple other spots I want to hit up again. That does happen. Again, just take your time. Because there's so many parts that look the same, sometimes it looks like you got to a part that you didn't actually get to. Okay. So I'm going to be using fire red here. I'm going to get a little thicker paintbrush. I'm going to use about this thick of one. I don't think there's any numbers on this. Actually, there is a number 8 on this. I don't know a whole lot about painting, so if you know what a painting number 8 is, that's what I'm using, painting brush number 8. Then I'm just going to spend time just going down each and every one of these. Do know that you will tear up your vinyl or your stamp a little bit, because this does have acetone in it. So it probably will not look as cool of a stamp, but it'll still look great. It just sometimes eats through some of it. He wasn't too worried about the stamp that Discraft put on there. Even though I think it looks pretty cool. This is a pretty good looking stamp. Good job, Discraft. Kind of remember where you started so you can go back to that same spot. Again, if you wanted to do a glue bed or a lotion bed for the top, which is totally easy and doable, I've already showed you how to do the glue bed, or you can watch one of my other videos about the lotion bed. Just make sure you let this stencil sit for at least 24 hours, which means you're looking at about a 3-day project if you do it. Glue beds, lotion beds, you still need to let it sit. It's super important that it sits, so do take that time. Do allow that to happen. Okay. Now I kind of started in this section, so that's where I'm going to go back. You can see it really eating through the stamp now. Normally on the second run around is when you start to see that. It just kind of takes the... you'll still see some of the stamp, but it does take some of the stamp coloration away. And it's okay if the whole disc looks red by the end of this. You probably could actually use a big paintbrush, but I like to make sure I get all the little nicks and corners and crannies on these things. That really ate through a lot of that stamp. You'll still see the outline of the stamp as well, even if it does kind of eat through it like it's doing right now, which is one of the kind of cool things about stamps, that even if you do totally remove the stamp, it has some of the impressions left. Also, make sure you're not going all the way down to the bottom. Just go to the very top of the acetone and dye mixture. One of the other things I like to do kind of periodically is just kind of, especially since I got some of that stamp on there, just removing. Oh, be very careful. Don't do what I just did. We'll just leave that like that. I peeled up some of the sticker. I didn't want to push down that hard, and I did. So don't do that. If you want to blot it a little bit, you can blot it, but don't just do what I just did. I should have remembered not to do that, but I did it anyways. Okay, you want to go ahead and let that thing sit for 5 minutes now. The goal of the 5 minutes will allow it to properly get in there, and it's exactly what you want. So go ahead and put your cap back on. Tighten down really tight. Go ahead and grab your acetone container to rinse out your paintbrush with some acetone. This has been used a lot, so it does look pretty dark and muddy, but that's okay. The acetone will kind of eat through. Go ahead and cap that back up. Wait for 5 minutes, then we'll go ahead and reveal it. Okay, you can go ahead and grab your pick now. And you can kind of start wherever you want. I think I'm going to start in the center. And we're going to go ahead and start to reveal the disc. Sometimes you can get it all in one pool. I don't really care if I do that. I know it may look cooler on video, but just take your time. Also, this thing will stick to every paper towel in the area, so when you're pulling this up, make sure you're not digging into your disc with the picks. That's really, really crucial, that you're just kind of getting the very edge and that's all you're doing. That looks pretty sweet. So the next thing to do is go ahead and wash this. I'm not going to show you that step, but go ahead and wash this thing off outside in the sink, or if you have an indoor sink, I'd encourage an outdoor sink. I'm going to do one more thing. I think I'm going to hit the outside of this with some more red, because it does have that little mess up of blue on the side, and I think it will just help kind of define the edges a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my turntable. If you don't have a turntable, there's a couple other options you can do. You can just simply freehand it, or kind of do anything like that that you can think of. Sometimes you can get some kind of spinning plate. Okay, that looks really cool too. This one's going to be really hard to tell if it's centered, because you can't look at the edge line. Okay, I think that's pretty close. So, gonna get the fire red one more time. I'm gonna use a smaller paintbrush this time. This one's much smaller. This one says a 3. So I'm guessing that's probably maybe 3mm. I'm not certain. I probably should know that, but I don't. And then we're just gonna hit that edge line up. Try to go where you don't see as much from the previous time doing it. So the goal is I'm literally just touching it against the edge of the disc, trying to go in the same spot I went the last time. Trying to make it a consistent coloration too. There's sometimes darker and lighter spots, just trying to get it all the same color. Do just a little bit more, not much. One other thing you can do, if you want to do it more by hand like that, you can. I don't prefer that method. I'm not very good at spinning it and keeping my other hand straight, but I have seen some people do that and heard of some people doing that. So and the big thing is I'm resting my hand like this as I'm doing this. You're probably getting sick watching that thing spin. And you can tell it's not perfectly centered. I really wanted to center it on the Discraft, not the actual ESP/Discraft portion. That way you just see a little bit of Discraft coming through. Go and get your acetone. I'm kind of doing this off the screen, but you do want to make sure you clean out your paintbrush. You're going to let this thing sit for at least 5 minutes. After it's sat for 5 minutes, go ahead and wash the entire thing, and then you're ready to start throwing it. This meteor turned out really sweet. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section below. But I do want to put one other thing out there. One of the things I did is put a little bit of UV dye in there, in the yellow. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn out the lights and put the UV light on. And man, you can really see that. If you're playing and you have a UV light out on a glow round, you'll be able to see that perfectly. So if this was helpful, please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how I did. I know it's not perfect. I don't think I've ever had a disc dye job that came out perfect, but they always come out really sweet and really unique. And remember, it came from this to this. Pretty awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching.